In a forgotten file of history lies a mystery that challenges our certainties about time. Chronologies that do not fit emerge like cracks in the line of the past, fractures that cast doubt on what we thought we knew. Imagine an ancient map showing continents with impossible shapes, drawn before humanity charted the world. Imagine an artifact found in a remote tomb with mechanisms suggesting technology, centuries before technology itself. There are records of cities appearing in medieval texts, yet supposedly only existing 1,000 years later. These chronologies are like pieces that do not fit in the puzzle of time, and each one opens a larger door to the unknown. The voice narrating this tale delves into dusty documents, explores diaries, and forgotten letters. There it finds altered dates, accounts of travelers describing inventions that could not exist. Some speak of ships sailing seas before the arrival of iron. Others mention an eclipse recorded twice in the same century. Each page seems a challenge, a test to chronological logic. The question is simple yet unsettling. Are we facing errors or fragments of a broader history that eludes us? If one manuscript recounts a floating city in the year 500 and another places it in the year 1500, which is real? Time seems to bend, and the narrative moves forward like a torch in an immense tunnel. Those who dare to follow this path soon discover that the past is not fixed, but malleable. Perhaps time is a fabric with loose threads, and by pulling one, we expose lost trajectories. We trace the footsteps of kings born after they died, of inventors who presented blueprints before they were born, and yet the dates are there, signed, sealed, indisputable. We continue advancing through the labyrinth of time, and each step reveals a new enigma. A strange chronology emerges from a monastery hidden among mountains where a monk wrote that he saw stars extinguish in broad daylight, an event that modern astronomy places centuries later. The manuscript describes constellations that do not exist today, as if the observer had gazed at a sky before or after our own. On another continent, a Portuguese explorer narrated the encounter with a device that projected images onto a stone wall, anticipating the invention of the projector by more than 300 years. His notes detail tiny gears and an intense light that emanated from an unknown mineral. These scattered accounts accumulate like leaves swept by the wind, forming a mound of doubts. The dates do not match, and time seems to shatter like tempered glass exposed to fire. If we accept that the past can be disordered, we must also accept that the future may have already occurred for someone else. There are records of travelers describing flying machines before Leonardo and testimonies of letters signed by people who had not yet been born. The voice narrating delves into colonial archives where a woman claims to have received a photograph in the 17th century, and the image showed a city with metallic towers illuminated by electric lights. No one could explain that object or its origin. Later, the trail leads to a Sumerian tablet that mentions a machine to measure time with atomic precision, a concept inconceivable for its era. Each new piece enlarges the puzzle and forces us to question whether time is linear or if it folds upon itself like a river returning to its source. We continue gathering fragmented evidence, seeking meaning in the chaos in this second part of the tale. Perhaps each anomaly is a footprint of those who crossed eras without permission, leaving invisible marks on history that we barely see. The third part of this journey through the mismatched chronologies leads us to an even more disturbing discovery. In a library buried beneath Roman ruins, a record was found describing a comet that crossed the sky, leaving a greenish trail for 3 nights. Modern astronomers identify a similar phenomenon, but it occurred 18 centuries later. It is possible that both events are the same, repeated at different times. The account continues and mentions a traveler who claimed to have seen in the desert a crystal tower that shone like the sun and vanished at dawn. No one could find that tower afterward, although several texts indicate that it reappeared centuries later on another continent. These coincidences raise questions that challenge our notion of time. If events repeat in cycles, or if objects travel between eras, then our history is merely one version among thousands. The narrating voice delves into maritime chronicles where a clock is described with precision impossible for its century, and maps show coastlines formed by glaciers that have yet to melt. A letter mentions a machine capable of stopping time for brief moments, and another recounts a sunken city that appeared intact in a dream shared by 20 people. Each discovery intensifies the feeling that the past is mutable and the future is a shadow that sometimes advances. We continue piecing together the puzzle with scattered fragments, and although fear grows, so does curiosity. If we manage to understand these chronologies, perhaps we will discover that reality is a malleable current in which we all float, seeking meaning among waves of broken centuries. This part marks the midpoint of the journey, and the unknown only increases before us as the dates warp like curved mirrors, revealing secrets that should not coexist with our known history. As we delve into the fourth part of the narrative, the scattered pieces begin to suggest something larger than mere errors in history. In a forgotten museum to the north, a fragment of metal embedded in sediments dating back millions of years is recorded. The surface shows tool marks impossible for creatures that did not yet exist. Scientists have attempted to explain the finding as modern intrusions, but the analysis of geological layers demonstrates that the object has remained buried since ancient times. In another file, a letter written in archaic Spanish describes a communication device similar to a telephone and mentions voices traveling through the air without wires. The scribe claims that this technology came from a caravan arriving from the future, although the text does not use that word, but a term that could be translated as coming. Further on, we find a diary of a Chinese cartographer who drew a map showing an island that disappeared centuries before his birth, suggesting he observed a distant past. Each document seems to connect in a web that we do not yet understand. Perhaps the chronologies that do not fit are not errors, but traces of a complex temporal fabric. The narrating voice reflects on the possibility that history does not advance in a straight line, but in spirals that intersect, creating echoes of repeated events. If we accept this idea, then the anomalies are not exceptions, but windows. Through these windows, some have looked or even traversed, leaving scattered testimonies that we now attempt to piece together. Perhaps those who wrote about machines and future cities were not visionaries, but witnesses. Or perhaps they were involuntary travelers caught in the whimsical flow of time. The magnitude of the mystery grows with each discovery, and we feel that the threshold of understanding is near, yet still hidden behind a thick fog that demands we continue forward to find the final key. In the fifth and final part, we approach the center of the enigma where all the impossible chronologies converge. The narrating voice has gathered impossible maps, anachronistic artifacts, letters that anticipate futures, and ruins that seem to come from eras that never existed. Now we imagine a circular room filled with yellowed documents spread across an immense table. Each piece tells a different story, but they all share a detail that had previously gone unnoticed. A mark, a symbol, a pattern that repeats. It is an incomplete circle, 3 lines crossing at the center as if indicating a point of union between times. That symbol appears on the Sumerian tablet, in the letter from the woman of the 17th century, on the Chinese map, and even in the metallic fragment buried millions of years ago. The conclusion emerges slowly like a shadow taking shape. Perhaps all these chronologies do not fit not because they are errors, but because they belong to a different time that brushes against ours and mixes in brief moments. As if there were overlapping layers, parallel historical realities that sometimes touch, interrupting the known timeline. Maybe there were advanced civilizations forgotten by a cataclysm, or perhaps travelers from the future inadvertently left scattered traces. The narrator observes that some dates seem to be mirrors of others, reflections that bend, creating duplicity. a king born after he died, an invention that arises before it is imagined, a photograph in a century without cameras, all part of the same incomplete circle. The mystery is not to solve each piece, but to understand that time is not an arrow, but an ocean. And we, tiny beings, navigate its waves believing that there is a fixed order, when in reality, we move among crossing currents, dragging fragments of past, future, and unlived possibilities. Perhaps we will never obtain a definitive answer, but the journey itself reveals that time is vaster and stranger than history admits. The chronologies that do not fit are not errors. They are doors between worlds, and only those who dare to look discover that the clock was never a line, but an eternal circle where everything returns, everything repeats, and nothing remains still.